Hey everyone, welcome to GrowthLoop Live. I am Chris Sell. I'm the co-founder and chief product officer of GrowthLoop, and I'm very excited to talk to you about the Loop today. We're going to be talking about both the product side and where we're headed with our vision, as well as how this rubber meets the road with our actual customers. So I'm very excited to have with me Catherine Toll, our director of solutions architecture. Catherine, you want to say hi to the group before we get started here?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, everybody. Super excited to be here. As Chris mentioned, my name is Catherine. I'm the director of our solutions architecture and customer team here at GrowthLoop. So I lead a team of solutions architects and customer success managers who are all really focused on, number one, how do we empower our customers to make the most of their own customer data? And then number two, how do we work directly with Chris and with the product organization to ensure that all of that customer feedback is making it onto our product roadmap, and that we're also anticipating needs as we see them coming.
That's what I'm excited about today's session is we're going to take you through the vision of GrowthLoop as a product and what it means for enterprise marketing organizations. But we're also going to make it super tangible on the customer side with stories about how rubber meets the road. How does this actually get applied at Fortune 500 companies to accelerate their marketing experimentation and results? So let's get right into it. As you know, we recently launched and we've been talking a lot about this concept of the loop. So what is the loop and why does it matter? Well, first, to understand why the loop matters, we want to go through the state of marketing today. So we're going to walk you through a little bit about what we're seeing in the state of marketing today in the MarTech stack. Two, we're going to walk through our vision for where that's headed overall and what shifts and changes we're seeing in the landscape. And Catherine will be talking through what shifts we're seeing customers make and how they're thinking about taking that journey. And then three, we're actually going to introduce the loop. And with that context, we hope to make let you in on where we see the loop solving for a lot of the current challenges in the MarTech space. And then four, we're going to show you the loop in action. We're actually going to do a demo so you can see it live and how it's being used at our customers. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the state of marketing, I think, let's start here. The reason I love to show these lovely dots on the screen, I think everybody has seen Scott Brinker's MarTech landscape slide. Which ones you want to put in your MarTech stack to engage your customers? That's a lot of choices. What that also means, though, is it's a lot of silos and it's a lot of data silos. So as you bring in these different logos into your MarTech stack, you might have one for mobile messaging. You might have one for your CRM, your email messaging. You might have one for your paid media. You may have one that actually you might have two for your email and different organizations within your company. And what that creates is a bunch of silos. Silos of data, silos of teams and how they engage your customers. And so what that ends up meaning is you have different silos of data that make it difficult for you to actually launch campaigns quickly. And if you look at it from your marketer's perspective, really their job is to try to create a cohesive experience for your customers. And how can they do it when there's all these silos? Usually it's different teams actually doing different types of communications with your customers and actually overlapping with each other. And so this has been a huge challenge for marketing over the last 20 years, especially as channels proliferate. It's becoming more and more difficult to create a cohesive customer experience and actually hit your marketing goals. And the biggest complaints we get from marketers today is, one, it takes me too long to set up a campaign for a single channel. Two, I don't know what happens after I set up that campaign. What business impact am I driving? Am I actually driving any revenue with my campaigns? And three, how do I report this up to my boss? And when you talk to CMOs, their complaint is, well, how do I get my marketers moving faster and to stop complaining about the tool set and the silos and actually empower them to do their jobs instead of making their jobs more difficult? And two, how do I present to the CEO that we're actually trying to achieve business objectives and we're successful in doing so? And so, Catherine, I don't know if you've seen some of this at our enterprise customers that we work with as they try to break down the silos. I'd love to hear your thoughts there.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously we are very, very pro here going cross-channel and having these really comprehensive campaigns that target your customer, where it makes the most sense for them. But it's interesting because you start out kind of always with the slowness that tends to be endemic to marketing organizations. And sometimes, and then as they try to think about going cross-channel, that introduces this other layer of complexity where suddenly they're having to coordinate amongst a much larger group. They're having to figure out, how do I centralize this targeting strategy? Whereas previously, when you're operating in silos, it maybe wasn't optimizing your marketing, but you are actually able to move relatively quickly within a smaller group. But so as we start to go cross-channel across these platforms, great, you're increasing the range of touch points. So it's like you're exposing your customers, your prospects, but you're also, creating that additional layer of complex, like, organizational decision making. And then when it comes to measurement, you tend to have the same problems going cross-channel with measurement. And so when I think about the cross-channel organizations, or the organizations doing cross-channel marketing that I work with, I think probably about half of them are doing this really, like, hyper specific form of measurement where you're designing these really complex experiments that take a long time to like design, launch, measure. So you're getting some very hyper specific insights, but they aren't particularly, like, generalizable. And then the other half, I would say, are either doing, or probably doing, like, no really custom measurement, but they're using measurement in these downstream platforms. And pretty much every organization that I talk to then says, if I were actually doing as well across all my channels as, like, all of the individual downstream platforms that I'm doing, like, I should own the entire market at this point, because all of those platforms are just distributing those downstream conversions to their own activations and not taking into consideration, what are the different cross-channel activations that are happening, how can I be distributing these conversions across the different touch points. So I think those are, some of the most common problems that I see. So number one, it's as I start to break down the silos, it becomes really slow to get my campaigns to go to market, and because of that organizational decision making. Then the second piece is measurement, where it becomes very, very complex to get scaled measurement for insights across channel.
It does feel like there's that resistance point from going from having a marketing team think about single channel versus cross channel. And that's where I see actually a lot of folks go backwards, is they just settle. They're basically like, you know what, maybe we'll just stick with email and we're only going to communicate through email. That's all my team does. And I'm just going to try to measure email, and I'm just going to claim purchases from email if I can. Usually they do opens and clicks, and they stop trying to go cross channel. And then a year later, they're like, why aren't we having a cohesive conversation with our customers? Why did this customer get these 5 messages across these channels giving different coupons? It doesn't make any sense to the user themselves. And then they start to reapproach it a second time and they try to cross that barrier. But I think you're exactly right. The question is, how do you cross that barrier in terms of going cross-channel and then actually going to measurement from there?
I think that's also what we talk about a lot, which is sort of how, the process that you want to implement has to reflect the technology, and the technology has to reflect the process. And that if you aren't structuring your organization or buying technology, like, according to that alignment that you want to have across channels, it's going to be, like, pretty tough. You really need those two components. So not just the drive to have a process or not just the technology, you have to have both sides.
Yep, exactly. And that's how you cross the chasm. So I guess, we've kind of walked through the state of marketing. What I'd love to do is actually talk through a customer example, just as, like, how did you see them actually cross that chasm and start to approach bringing cross-channel marketing into their organization? I know typically for us, it starts at the data layer. We see them start to get that right first, and then they start thinking about, okay, now how do I orchestrate and how do I measure?
Yeah, absolutely. So something that we do quite often in a lot of our engagements is really get all the different marketing organizations or all the different silos from our client together and with, like, a full day marketing workshop. And stage one is really just, what is the alignment across what exists in the data layer? We had organizations, so they're basically siloed or verticalized by channel. So we had, the owned media team saying, we had no idea that we could actually get bookings and, like, conversion data in BigQuery to build audiences. So, like, number one is just aligning everyone about, like, what are the common resources that we have as a team so that we're maximizing use of that data layer. Then I would say really, like, the second piece is ensuring, like, for that particular organization, that their segmentation strategy is aligned. And again, this is where your technology has to reflect, I think, what organizationally your goals are. So if your goals are to go cross-channel, then you need to have a platform that enables you to easily go cross-channel. And so in this particular case, kind of the pain points that we identified were that previously when they were, siloed to individual channels. So messaging, owned media, paid media, et cetera. There were just no common audience definitions. That really meant that they were like cohesively targeting the same segment or different segments, like depending, like sometimes the audience overlap is a really positive thing in that you're reinforcing messaging across channels. Sometimes it's a negative thing in that you're diluting messaging about different product features, et cetera. But so there wasn't clear alignment on definitions.
The common refrain too is marketers have no idea what each other are doing from the different teams that own the channels. They're like, if you ask them, they'll say, yeah, I have no idea what they're doing over in mobile messaging. I don't know what they're sending.
Yeah. And then at the same marketing workshop, I think the third thing that we talked about, which was measurement, that was really clear here that again, measurement tended to be specifically limited, particularly in like a paid media case, to what is the measurement that my channel offers. And again, that paid media channel didn't even think that they had access to like this conversion data that the messaging team is now saying they have access to and they're using to measure their campaigns. And so suddenly, like I said, you're realizing that all these organizations are talking across completely different success metrics. When actually going back to the data layer piece, it turns out that they might all have access to like this full funnel, like bookings, conversions, et cetera, metric, to make this feasible. So oftentimes I think it's more feasible than organizations actually realize, but because they're so verticalized, it just, that opportunity really doesn't become like apparent. So you get everyone in a room centered around how do we leverage a common technology and a common process to go cross channel.
Yeah, it really does feel like the state of marketing today is the marketers are frustrated with slow campaigns. It is very difficult to get results on those campaigns. And you have to iterate through that cycle continually, which is difficult to achieve the results. Like companies are expecting marketers to do more with less right now, to be more efficient, to drive more LTV and bring back churn customers. Yet you have a slow process that's hard to measure. And so I guess in terms of where we're headed is that's really what GrowthLoop is trying to solve. And I know this is 2024 now, so we've been talking about the modern data stack for a while. So we're going to take that as table stakes. You start with the data layer. Like one, you shouldn't have 20 different databases in your MarTech tools, siloing all your data and having marketing teams on each of those tools send out siloed campaigns and not having any idea what they're doing. That state of marketing is dead. What's happening is people are starting to consolidate their data, and the visionaries are bringing it together in a Snowflake, BigQuery, Databricks. So you have a common layer for all your marketing channels for your data. And what that does for you is it allows you to do exactly what, Catherine, you were just speaking to, start to have a common language across all your marketing channels for all of your marketers to work on. And really with GrowthLoop, our first iteration was allowing all of your marketers to come to that data layer and create audiences. But to create audiences in groups of whether they're onboarding customers or high LTV customers or churned customers, you can actually use those in every single marketing channel immediately. So your marketers have a common language, but they can also empower themselves and be self-service. And the whole goal of building that was speed. We wanted to empower marketers so that we don't have slow campaigns. You have more shots on goal and more experiments. But where we've started headed next is saying, well, one, slow campaigns was just part of the problem. You want to try more shots on goal. But the other big problem that we've identified, and Catherine, you were just walking through, is what just happens once I send the campaign? I need an understanding from each of those silos. Did they click? Did they open? Did they end up making a purchase? And that's what we call the missing revenue column. In all of your marketing tools, when you log in, wouldn't it be nice if they told you how much revenue you drove? And Catherine, I liked your comment. If you add up all the revenue columns in your paid media tools, you'd have more revenue than you do as a business. I think that's true for many businesses. That's how they feel. And so in reality, you need a source of truth of how you measure campaigns. So you need to bring that data back. And what we're seeing companies start to do is be able to bring that data back into their data cloud and actually measure every single audience, whether it's onboarding, whether it's high LTV, whether it's churn, and actually see how they're doing in each channel. But from there, that's really just the start. We're starting to see companies say, well, what can I do with AI once I have all that data in a single location to actually accelerate my marketing cycle even faster? And that's what we call the loop. And that's really the vision of GrowthLoop. So we're going to walk through each of those three things. One is table stakes, accelerate your campaigns with self-service for marketers. Two is the loop. That's actually getting your marketing campaign data back into a single location and being able to report on everything your marketing is doing. And 3 is accelerating that loop. And so we're going to walk through each of these and actually how our customers are solving for this. The vision for GrowthLoop and what we're trying to bring is solve those key 3 problems. One is acceleration, is that's key, is we start with activate quickly. You want to increase the speed you can launch campaigns. And so I know, Catherine, this is usually where we start, is make it self-service for marketers, give them a window into their data and start getting them to take shots on goal. And I know you've been working with several of our enterprise customers over the last 5 years to say, how do we get them from launching 1 campaign every 3 months to launching 50? Can you walk us through a little bit about what we've done in activation today?
Yeah, I think first of all, this is typically the catalyst for teams looking for a no-code segmentation platform, which is sort of our original bread and butter offering is GrowthLoop. I will say I don't think I've ever talked to a prospect or a client who said oh, actually, I feel like I've got marketer segmentation down. My marketers know my data layer, super easy for them to build audiences. And I get that to some extent, the self-selection for companies that are looking for this kind of platform. But I also have a very strong feeling that it's pretty endemic to marketing organizations across the board. And so I ended up honing on a really specific example, but I could talk about literally any client we have here. But for this particular, it's an e-commerce client. They are super focused on number 1, acquisition, including churn and win back. And then number 2, during the onboarding phase, driving increased feature adoption across their platform during that period of onboarding that's really critical to generating long-term stickiness. And so for them, originally audience curation was driven by a ticketing system. So they would submit a ticket for data engineering team to build an audience. The data engineering team would eventually size the audience, then they'd have to go back and forth because the size wasn't right. They iterate on criteria, but they don't know what criteria is actually available. And so it would take weeks to actually develop an audience that may or may not even be used at the end of the day. And so using GrowthLoop, they're able to put now a super simple visual UI on top of the data. So marketers know what data they have. They can easily size audiences. They can easily iterate on criteria. And that criteria is completely custom to their organization. So it's everything from descriptive attributes in the data warehouse, more straightforward ones like geography, age, demographic, to things that are more complex that are coming from a data science team. So things like propensity scoring, estimated first 30-day spend, LTV, et cetera. So they're able to utilize the full spectrum of, again, those kind of simple attributes, all the way to these more advanced machine learning models that a data science team is generating to instantly build segments. So they can now build a segment that would have previously taken weeks of ticketing in a few minutes, and send that downstream to email and paid media.
Yeah, I think that was the first aha moment we had with our enterprise customers was exactly that, is you started to see them, and they were doing it for business intelligence purposes. They were doing to visualize data. They were starting to bring it in BigQuery, Snowflake, Databricks, and Redshift. And they were saying, look, let's visualize some graphs about what's going on in the company. And they realized they were creating a unified customer data layer. And they were like, wow, marketing's asking us a lot of questions. And usually we just have to write SQL for them. And it takes us weeks to go back and forth through this ticketing system. And the first aha was, let's open that up, enable marketers to actually use and self-service create segments for any platform downstream. And so what that's evolved into, though, is customers start to accelerate. If you go from 1 to doing 100 audiences, what you have to scale next is what happened downstream. You want the report you can show to your boss that doesn't say you generated 150% of revenue within the company. You want accuracy in your reporting, and you want to know what purchases you actually drove with your email campaign. I was an email marketer in a former life. I always was very frustrated in my email tools. I always had my campaign name and then opens, clicks, and click-through rate in the tool. I was like, could somebody just tell me how many purchases, how many logins, how many add to carts that I drove? Instead, every time I'd have to go back to my data team. And so where GrowthLoop is headed with the loop is step 2 is understanding. For every single audience that you're launching across these channels, we're bringing the data back in from those channels, whether it's opens, clicks, whether it's actual logins to the platform. So you can see for this audience, what did they do afterwards? And since we're sitting on the power of the data cloud, which has purchase data within it, we can actually show you the missing revenue column. We can say you've activated this audience to Facebook ads and your email platform, and here's the purchases that have been driven in that audience. And so what that really drives is the first loop. That allows you to launch a single audience across channels, get back the data, and decide what worked and what didn't. And so you've automated two key pieces, and then you've given the marketer a report to send to their boss to say, hey, here's what we're doing to tackle major business issues and actually advancing our cause as a business. And so we get really excited just about those two steps. And I'll pause there, Catherine, for on the understanding side. How have you seen that start to scale in terms of what was the typical process before? And then what are you seeing folks do now that they have understanding in place?
Yeah. So I think, like, first of all, one thing I'll say kind of more generally about, Chris, what you were working on, which is basically my team metrics live in completely different places. So I've got like those downstream, like email, clicks, et cetera, those sort of like means measurements living in my downstream platforms. And I actually have my results measurement living in the data cloud. I think the whole MarTech, ad tech industry is evolving to realize that you need to be able to put those in the same place. And so now when you think about like what table state we talked quite a bit about today, but for these like downstream platforms, it's the ability to actually like use an API to get that information back into your data cloud. So the first thing I'll say is like, I think it's increasingly easy for organizations to actually get all of that information into a centralized place or more like cohesive full funnel measurement in their data cloud, which helps make our job easier as well. But so thinking in particular about like this e-commerce client that I mentioned earlier. So the different kind of growth modules that they've been using to better understand their customers. So number one, audience overlap. So where are my different organizations retargeting the same individuals? And like I said earlier, retargeting can be a good thing or a very bad thing because sometimes you're retargeting them with completely different messaging. In this case, for this particular client, about like completely different features that you want them to adopt, and that just dilutes the message. It just causes confusion. But there's also really positive overlap where your retargeting is really effective and reinforcing messaging and increasing like share of mind. And so that is sort of like the next step of this, which the client also utilizes for, which is going to be like attribution and journey optimization. So effectively, what are the best paths for my customers, either to acquisition for the marketers you work with who are like the top of the funnel, and then towards like feature adoption as well for more of the onboarding phase. So what combination of touch points and what sequencing there is actually driving ideal outcomes. And so previously that was like very, very disconnected. Again, like thinking about, what are these different activations that are happening? Their channels are super siloed. There isn't really a clear understanding of which channels are driving which conversion. Everybody's claiming every conversion. But so they've been able to use GrowthLoop now to power that more consistent, like sort of true full funnel measurement across the board. And one thing I'll also say that's important about this is I'm getting ahead of myself, but Chris, maybe I'm just priming you up to talk about the third stage, which is acceleration and AI. We don't jump straight from activating to AI. And I think that's something really important is that it's not just you activate a campaign and then sort of a black box we tell you tactically, we think you should do this as the next step for this campaign. It's much more, let's help you understand what are the overarching business goals and whether your campaigns are driving those. And so that you actually have this understanding of like why then AI down the road is decisioning in the way that it is. And so that kind of higher level decision makers have again, that high level understanding of overall directionally, what types of campaigns, what channels are driving the outcomes that I want.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite things that our customers have done is they, one of them, it was an e-commerce example as well. They started to speed up. They got to about 100 activations in terms of launching audiences to different channels. And then they had an understanding visualization where they split each of those into treatment and control groups. And they just they saw how much revenue lift they saw across the 100 activations. And they showed that to the CEO of the company. And they said, this is what marketing is doing. And in order for that to happen, you need to accelerate activation and understanding together and get marketers to go through those loops faster. And that's really a true loop. The faster you can get through activating and getting your marketers understanding, that's a loop. And that leads us into the next one, which is acceleration. Exactly what you said, Catherine. Once you have the understanding, you have two very important data assets here for the marketers. One is you have all the audiences they've ever targeted and which channels they targeted them in. And then you also have how those audiences actually perform down to the purchases that were made. That's really valuable to have in one spot. And if you have that in one spot, that's where AI gets really effective. And we always say you don't have an AI strategy unless you have a data strategy. Well, a very good data strategy in marketing is to have your customer data in one spot, have all your audience and journey data in one spot, and have all the performance data of that marketing in one spot. Guess how smart AI can get on that data? And that really is what brings us to step 3 of the loop. That's about accelerating, activate, and understand. Our goal with Accelerate and the features that we've launched and we'll be talking through today is to get marketers to go through activate and understanding even faster, to be their thought partner in it. We always believe marketers will be in the loop. At GrowthLoop, we don't believe in black boxes. We believe marketers understand what their customers need. And so we want them to have the conversation with customers at the end of the day. But what AI can do is it can take into account what audiences have been targeted before, how they've performed, and actually make suggestions to the marketers on what they should do next. It should be a brainstorming or thought partner. And so that's where we position Marv, is to take this data from activation and understanding and provide those recommendations to marketer on an active basis. So that's the loop, and we're excited to walk you through it today in more in-depth demo here in a second. So now we're going to actually make the loop much more tangible through a product demo. So what I'm showing you here, I'm going to go through the 3 steps of the loop as we've discussed them. One is activation, which is table stakes. We're going to show you how you can open up your data cloud to marketers to self-service and orchestrate audiences across channels. But 2 is understanding, actually getting an understanding of how that audience is performing from those downstream channels. And then 3, accelerating it with Marv. And we're going to be talking through a little bit more about where we're headed with AI to bring the loop and accelerate it for your marketing teams, so that we're not just providing specific tactical recommendations. Really, we're becoming your marketing team's thought partner. And our goal is to not only just suggest audiences, we want to suggest full journeys and actual towards your business goals. So the AI can say, here's a journey for your business goal to reduce churn that your marketers can review and collaborate on, so you can run a cross-channel experience tailored towards that goal. So first, I'm going to walk you through activation. If I go ahead here, I'm going to actually just create a quick audience that targets Chicago customers, because it's the greatest city in the world. If you know, I'm located in Chicago. So let's go ahead and name our audience Chicago. Now, what you can see here is a visual canvas for your marketing team to actually just create segments. All they need to do is actually visually drag and drop their segment. Here, I'm going to select city equals Chicago. I can add in any filter from my data cloud to actually make this audience, but here I'm just going to keep it simple. Let's select Chicago today. We got 9,561 customers. So now that I've created this very simple segment, how do I activate it? How do I use it in all my marketing channels? Well, GrowthLoop has all the pre-built connectors for your marketing channels. So now this audience can be used in any of those channels. If you want to use it in Facebook, it just takes a click. If you want to use it in Google Ads, just a click. If you want to use it in your email channel, it's the same. All you do is select export audience, and then you'll get the channels that you've connected to through our pre-built connectors, and you'll actually just be able to activate them so they become available to your team in that channel. So here you can see I selected Facebook. I'm going to match on email address, and I'm going to export the audience. And it's really that simple. Once I've activated the audience, I can actually go over to Facebook and then just use this audience in my Facebook ad campaigns. So that's really activation. It's about bringing your marketers and empowering them with a self-service interface to activate campaigns. All right, so that brings us to step 2 of the loop, which is understanding. And this is about providing marketers with understanding about how that audience that you've activated across channels, or that journey that you've activated, is actually performing. So you can start on our ingest interface. You can actually ingest data from your downstream channels. In this example, I've exported to Facebook, but this could have been your email channel, your CRM. And I'm actually importing that data back because I want to know about the clicks and conversions that Facebook's reporting on. So I can click in here and actually provide my Facebook credentials. It'll start ingesting the data back to my data cloud. So then you have your audience data and your performance data sitting right next to each other, all automated by GrowthLoop. And so I'm not going to do that here. I'm actually just going to click over and I'll show you a quick example of what this performance looks like. The magic we're doing behind the scenes is we're actually linking this data with the audience that you've activated. So you start importing your data from Facebook, and then we're actually going to link it to the audience that you exported to Facebook as well. So if I go back to an audience, I can actually click on Insights, and I can actually start to see for Facebook, and this one went to Google Ads as well. I can see how much I've spent on that audience. I could see the number of impressions that have been served to that audience. I can also see the cost per click, the click-through rate, as well as if there's been any conversion. There's been no conversions yet on this audience. But the whole goal here is to tie the reporting from your downstream marketing channels back to the audiences that you're launching from your data cloud. And so this is really about connecting measurement to the data cloud for all your marketing channels. Where this gets really interesting is applying AI to all these data assets you put in the data cloud. And so if I go ahead and click over to home, what I'm going to start seeing is AI in action. This is really exciting because this gets to the acceleration phase. If I'm able to launch audiences faster and I'm able to ingest the marketing performance data back into my data cloud faster than ever before, what if you could then apply AI to that data to help and assist your marketers? And we're doing that in two key ways today. One, we're actually providing you with audience discovery recommendations directly on the homepage automatically for your marketers with justifications from the AI about why we're recommending that audience. And so not only are we going to be saying to the marketers, here's an audience for this specific goal, but here's why we think it would be good for that goal. And you can use these just like any other audience in the platform. And so if I go ahead and select one of these audiences, I'm actually going to be able to see that audience with the criteria directly in our platform. And I'm actually going to be able to use that in any channel, just like I use the other audience. I'm going to show that really quickly here. So this was an AI created audience. Not only did we create the SQL, we actually created the audience canvas. So I can see this is targeting people under 35 in San Francisco, Seattle, and New York. It's named my audience. I could edit this audience, and that's very important to have the marketer in the loop, and then I can go ahead and activate it to any channel that I'd like. And where this is headed in the future is AI is going to be your marketer's brainstorming partner. It is going to be their assistant. Marketers will always be in the loop. And the power here is when GrowthLoop connects AI for you to the data cloud, what we're going to be enabling for marketers is not just audience recommendations, but journey recommendations. How do you want to communicate with your customers across channels to achieve specific business objectives? So I'm very excited for 2024 and 2025. Going into 2025, we're partnering closely with Snowflake, AWS, and Google on how we get AI to connect to your data cloud to use the audience data, the activation data to different channels, as well as the marketing response data to actually become your marketing thought partner and accelerate the loop. All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time to go through the loop. We have a lot of great content coming up by our partners. I'd love to thank Catherine Toll. Thank you for joining us and taking us through the customer case studies today.
Of course, anytime. Very happy to hop on and chat with everybody.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for spending part of your day with us, and we'll talk to you soon.